Welcome into my first Draw With Me style video. Today I'll be working on a fairy tale inspired banner slash header. This is work done by Frank C. Pape for Children of the Dawn from 1908. I am using this for inspiration today because I really enjoy how there's lettering involved, but also various shapes, elements, and pen work along with this piece. And along with the detail, it's just very beautiful. I'm looking to design some headers for my Twitch page. In the About section, usually people talk a little bit about who they are, what games they play, where you can donate. And on my page, I have an About section, some specs about my PC and my tablet, a little bit more about my world building, and a couple other things sprinkled in. I'm really looking to add some more ambiance, but also immersion, and highlight my artwork there so that people have an idea of what I do, what my art looks like, and a good jumping point to other locations or a little bit about what's going on in my corner. Some ideas that I have here are the About, the world building, the website, and the flavor banners. And the flavor specifically is the idea of having a panel or a header that's just an image for the sake of an image. I'm really interested in adding something for fun beyond a descriptor or having some words. Also because I think that having something to look at without a link is kind of unique, but also the what are the words for it? The lettering isn't ADA accessible, so I want to try and make sure that whatever I have on my page is at least directing people to a place where they can read about what it is, or at least expand on it if the screen reader doesn't have access to knowing what the words are. Right now I'm starting with the About. I'm taking the lettering that I work with, which is currently Blackwood Castle, as part of my branding, and then outlining it so I have a little bit more of a sense for where I want shapes and where I want to have emphasis and the silhouette of the overall piece. I'm enjoying working with this font, and I think it's kind of fun and unique, especially with the flavor for fairy tale and a little bit of the medieval kind of energy. One of the things that I'm trying to work on with my art is exploring different line weights. I've really enjoyed my art in the past that I've made pieces with a single line weight, pen pressure, no tilt, and that's really enjoyable for me. But integrating or learning more of the art style around pen use and learning where the shading goes, I think is a really cool next step for me. One of the other things that I'm looking at learning about with this style exploration is how to use less circle-y shapes. I'm very circle heavy as an artist. Everything that I draw looks super cute because I'm so good at drawing circles. But when I want to try to lean into other emphasis on what I'm working in, give different expression or different character designs, my work ends up being still very circle-y. As you can see here, straight for the circle. I'm thinking about adding Apple, the character, to this About section, because About and Apple is my main character, and my reflection of myself with that Venn diagram of what is representing me on the internet. While we're not the same person necessarily or character, we should have a lot in common, and I just really, really love Apple as a character for my little Welsh red apple dragon. I'm so excited to give them more of a happy life, explore some stories, and some more world building with them. Right now, I've kind of started thinking about giving them a happy sleeping in the sun pose and expression, because that's something that they really like to do, and I also really like to do. So just kind of trying to figure out, I I usually enjoy placing where I think the head will go and then building the rest of the body movement off of that. However, I really just went full send into there's their face instead of figuring out where the rest of the body goes. So you'll get to see me sketching that in here. I try to build in the torso idea, in the hips, and then extend the legs into a possible pose for taking a relaxed nap or beginning to doze off. So this is a really interesting moment for me, because this is not usually how my sketch process goes. You can see me pausing at a couple moments, really trying to figure out where I was going with this. Apple as a character has had long hair. Right now we are in short hair era, but I really enjoy when Apple has long hair. I think for silhouette reasons, having short hair is really cool because they have so much going on with their character design. But I've tried building in a braid here, and you can see me going in and then going back to the face. Trying to figure out, well, maybe a downward facing sleepy face will really convey some well-rested moments or expression with a little bit of a smile. I think, though, a better expression for Apple, or a pose for Apple, would be an energetic one. But this, I'm not so sure where I would put it here for this about banner just yet. So I tinker with the legs a little bit longer, try to figure out where to put the paw, say, wait, no, just kidding. Maybe when I am laying down, I do not put my leg up while I am dozing. So maybe if I move both the legs to be in a more of a resting position, that will look more natural. But I really do enjoy Apple's design and trying to build an expression for them in the way that I want to let other people know who they are and what they're up to. You can see here where I'm building the tail, and I thought adding the wings too. If I'm going to be moving that leg down to match closer, then at least I can build up the silhouette for this piece with the wings and the tail in the air. And then I revisit the face again, kind of go in with the little sleepy at peace. The arm, I sure did put it there for some reason. I thought about aligning it with the bee, which is kind of fun and cute, maybe building in the lettering with the rest of the silhouette piece. Something fun about the Welsh dragons is that sometimes they're described and depicted as having cow-shaped ears. However, Apple has just the more of a classic extended dragon ear. However, the Apple family, for the Apple dragon family specifically, the family tree does have a little bit of a history with cow-shaped ears. Apple's dad and Apple's sister both have the cow-shaped ears. They are yellow apple dragons, and they have some curly hair to them and the downward kind of floppy shaped cow ears. I think one of the things that I get to learn more about mathematically in my artist brain is how to draw braids. They really get me. I have braided my own hair, I've braided other people's hair, and it's not entirely uncommon for me to have that in my life these days because my hair is quite long. But ultimately, the shape of braids, it gets me every time. I decided to not go with featuring Apple so big and having a big sleeping pose. And because I wasn't quite sure where to put Apple in an expressive way with this about piece in a full body pose, because when you're jumping, you're usually vertical, very vertical. And that kind of clashed a little bit with this completely horizontal piece. I kind of wanted whatever I was building off of for this banner to kind of be horizontal as well, kind of in mirroring the ones that we are using for inspiration by Frank Pape. And part of the world building for the apple orchard is this really big tree that's actually made out of two dragons that are hugging. That's how the tree grew from their graves. But this tree specifically that I'm drawing here is not that tree. I think for the shape language of it all, a undragoned hugging tree makes more sense for the space right here. But I thought about bringing in the branches to start shaping the bee and adding the different negative space between the big branches. This tree specifically isn't an apple tree. Apple trees are very, they're a little stout. They can be on the taller side, but their branches are very different than this one. This is more of a generic from my brain tree without a reference whatsoever. The apple tree, the branches are shaped more like a outturned umbrella. When the wind blows too much and your umbrella gets turned inside out, I would say that's more of what apple tree branches look like. They're very peculiar and quite a bit knobby, I think. And get to visit an apple orchard closer to apple season. I'm excited. I am very lucky to live where I live in the apple state. I'm drawing apple in the tree because I still think featuring apple is kind of important, even if they're kind of small, and maybe the about section might highlight more about the world building, perhaps. Talking a little bit about that, but putting apples somewhere I feel like is very important. I drew them really big though, so we need to shrink them down a little bit. They are 4 feet tall, canonically, in this form at least. So I'm trying to measure their size in comparison to the trunk and figure out how small I get to get them. In this piece, for this pose, what Apple is doing is kind of shielding their eyes as they're gazing out into the distance. This is a reference to the current zine piece that I'm working on for a trans health and wellness nonprofit organization. The zine will be printed closer to August, and that is also when donations will start happening. I am just one of the contributors to the zine, and I'm very excited. This pose specifically is from the piece that I'm working on because my buddy Kaber is also a contributor to the zine and is working on a piece for it. And I put Kaber into my zine piece, and likewise they put me in theirs, which is very charming. So I hope they're having a great day, and Kaber is doing this pose in my zine. So I thought it would be a fun little call back in reference to that. But also a really fun little fact about it is that this pose, specifically placement in the tree, is a reference to one of the Naruto openings. I watched a video about queer representation, or like queer themes in Naruto, a review video. It was just so fun So fun to revisit a show from my childhood, and this person was so good at deep diving into the motives and the writing, which was something I hadn't picked up on before when I had watched the show. I think I tried picking up the show again a handful of years ago, but there's so many episodes. You could probably guess where I am in One Piece. I'm not done. I'm definitely not done. But maybe someday I'd like to revisit it. Same with Naruto. I feel like after seeing that video and learning more about the writing and interpretation of how viewers and possibly also the writing and the characters, at least in terms of the people who were directing the animation, compared to the manga, it was so charming, and it'd be fun to revisit. But boy howdy, those spoilers. Or not spoilers, but those fillers. And speaking of filler, I'm going in and outlining the piece again, trying to think of more about the shapes I'm using. I talked earlier about being a very circle person. So you could see me going in and trying to add a little bit, just even a little bit more of a triangle shape to what we got going on here, to try and get away from the roundedness, the cuteness, and give some variation to these letters. You can see I carried through the arm laying over the B from the original sleeping resting position and turned it into the tree trunk. I thought that was so charming. I'm learning more about the landscape of Wales because I am the first generation in the United States, for better or for worse, and my family from Wales still has some connections over there. While I don't think that any of my immediate family lives in Wales right now, they're nearby and they visit quite often. I would really like the chance to go and visit, see the sheep, and really explore the landscape for myself. Right now, what I've been doing is going to my local library and renting books and movies, or videos rather, like documentaries, and watching those and listening, getting to learn more about the history of the land and also the creatures in it. One of the books that I got to read was about the development during the Iron Ages. I was actually hoping to learn more about the land prior to colonization by the Welsh people. But unfortunately, the book did not go back that far. So if you have any recommendations, I'd be excited to get my hands on those. Because I'm looking at this piece, and as I built that vague town in the background, it's not really a one-to-one representation of the world building that I've currently built so far. I think for the sake of this piece, until I have something more specific for a town that would go on top of a hill, and I think that this representation of buildings on top of a hill is recognizable to a lot of people and kind of gives the idea of a quaint and unique little space and place. So that's what's going on here, is me trying to figure out the building shapes, adding some windows, and kind of trying to figure out where things are stacked and how tall, and giving a little bit more character to it. Because a lot of the world building for the creatures that live here is actually less so buildings on top of the land, but more of a habitat and environment and home and housing that is built alongside and integrated with the landscape. So instead of a building being placed on top of the hill, it'd be more of a burrow. But this is a very, I think, recognizable for the intention of what's going on here is me trying to convey a little town. One of the things that it was also fun about drawing here is that you can see me adding a little support beam between the building side and the roof, and this is actually a reference to Pocopia, believe it or not. That's what's going on here. Is my first experience with a block city builder with those types of assets like Minecraft. I picked up Minecraft for maybe like 5 minutes. I wouldn't necessarily say that I've played Minecraft. I sure did nothing. I got to borrow the game while I was living with a family a handful of years ago, and they invited me to play. I picked up the controller, I wandered around a little bit. I think my character died. So Pocopia has been very fun and interesting. I enjoy the assets. I didn't think I would be much of a building builder or a builder at all, to be honest. So I've learned a lot so far, and just trying to figure out what kind of space that I want to build. Similar to this world building too, I actually built the habitats for the Pokemon more into the side of the hills rather than building a little house of sorts. I did definitely, as the game progressed, build a little house using the blueprints or otherwise, but I definitely have some really fun and favorite spaces that are just little burrows and caves and spaces that are built into or as an extension of the already existing landscape. That was something that was fun for me, was trying to intentionally not reshape the terrain. Because, man, when Animal Crossing New Horizons came out, I learned that I am not an exterior designer. I wouldn't even say I'm an interior designer, but that the gameplay style was so curious for me as somebody who is not so much of a architect, I suppose. I hadn't really had experience like that before. I started trying to add in some more triangle shapes, thinking about the landscape, how I have the tree, and trying to maybe think about bracken, because a lot of fairy tales and fairy tale imagery can incorporate bracken and ferns and thorns. I ultimately played around with it a little bit here. You can see I added this thin line shape and then carved it out to try and get that more of a lino cut feel alongside the other fine lines going on here. Added some thorns. This leaf down at the bottom left hand corner is just unrealistically big next to this tiny vine thorn thing. So I removed them both because I thought maybe if I'm adding a thin one and it's not clicking for my brain, what if I add a thick thorn? But it does kind of get in the way of what I want this about to say. Silhouette wise, I think this A is very strong, and putting anything in front of it kind of is competitive with the lettering, and that's what it's here for, is to read it. But maybe that's something I can explore in the other pieces, is integrating the letters as a secondary feature. But right now, for this one, they're very first place primary focus as I've built everything else around them. It'd be interesting to build a piece for a header or a banner where I have the imagery and then I build the lettering in. I'm not even sure what that would look like, but it would be so fascinating to see. I like the idea of it. My references for today definitely have the lettering more separate. There's not a lot of integration here, so I think I definitely took a leap in my own direction for adding the tree and building that into and around the lettering instead of having it separate. I think about adding leaves because my theme is apples and the apple orchard, and even though this tree isn't a apple tree, it has a tree with an apple in it, but some leaves are good. That's very thematic. Even if they're not, it doesn't really make sense exactly with what's going on here. They're much bigger than everything else. I think it adds some flavor. And I think about fairy tales and journeys and maybe adding some pebbles. I am actually really excited and proud of this idea. I think there's more to explore here with having a pathway through the letters, kind of up to the little town, or implied to go up to the little town anyways, because this is so fun. You're going on a little trip. That's where you're headed. What is Apple, the character, doing out here in the middle of nowhere in a tree? I don't know. How'd they even get up there? I'm not sure. There's not a lot of branches to support them climbing on up, and their wings aren't big enough to fly. But if there's a will, there's a way. Same with this bee. I'm starting to explore more of the shapes here, adjusting, because I like the idea that this bee is connected instead of being separate from the tree or behind it. And I think this works really, really well. I think about adding some lines, and I don't think that they worked out because it really adds too many shapes in the bee. But working on the trunk, I think, is definitely a next best step, if not going to add stark or defining lines inside of the shape. I think it could be cool maybe if the about was a bigger image and I had an even smaller brush to add finer detail work in. And I think that's something I would really like to explore too, because I talked about the detailed work that I admire a lot in different pieces, but here I'm just kind of doodling. Ultimately, I think this piece would work really good if I blew it up and then add a detail there. But with the single line weight pen pressure, I think that this is a really good practice for getting a feel with the spacing for things, because when you work with a same line brush where there's no differentiation when you have pen pressure, I struggle trying to make sure that the negative space makes sense, that it's not too crowded, and if it is crowded, that it makes sense. But I'm still learning. You can see I'm thinking about the shapes for the trees, adding more detail without adding a lot of little lines, because my brush is already kind of creating too much shape and taking up a lot of space whenever I add something. And adjusting the hill over on the right, trying to make it more hillish. It's very tall right now, very vertical, and less so slow, sloping hill. So I take it down a notch, and I think that complements the building from the little town quite well. Gives it that little wizardy feel of a very tall single building, sometimes amongst the fray of other little buildings. Time to connect the dots, or the branches, rather. For these leaves, I think that they are simple enough. They add a little bit of shape and some fun flair, just not too much, not too much. The shape of the thorn branch, I think, got me with the circularness of it and really creating a shape rather than adding an accent to the A itself. But boy, these roots for the B. I tried figuring out what was going on with the roots and why I didn't quite like them, but I figured it out. I really did. What I was missing was the foreshadowing of it. I'm drawing these shapes for the roots, and they are just weird triangles. Weird, not even triangles. They look kind of like a finger or something like that. But I realized, oh, I just need to make them bumpy. When I look at tree roots, they're usually kind of bumpy, and when I look at a tree root from the front and it's coming towards me, that's what I'm missing. It's not just a straight line towards me usually. It's got some bumps to it, some shape variation. And I get it. I don't give up. It's so it's almost clicking. Look, you see, I really like that line. It's so good. So I look at expanding it a little bit more. It's just you know, it's a funky little spot. I'm going to wind down in the words part now, and you can just tune in. You'll see me going through with colors, adding a white backdrop, and then adjusting to add the texturing of the paper, and then trying to figure out how I want to color it. What kind of colors do I want for this? Graphic design is not my passion. Logos are so fascinating. There's so much for me to learn. And for this piece, I went with, kept it kind of basic, I think. One of my favorite parts you'll get to see is the shading. I was really, really excited about that because of the dappling from the tree. So stick around and check that out. You'll get to see adding the multiply layers and the screen and the overlay and finally the final product. Hello, everyone. It's been a minute since I said some words, but we finished the About panel. So here it is, and it's on the Twitch page here. I enjoy that the lettering, it was pretty bold, it's fairly readable, it highlights some aspects from the world building, makes you curious about it, adds some flavor. So hopefully I'll be able to do some of the other banners soon for things like credits and the world building and the website. But thank you so much for tuning in and joining me for my first draw along with me.